All right, hello. Welcome to part two of our Python workshop for IEEE CPP. I'm the current president, Samir Sharma, and today we're going to go ahead and use the fundamentals that we learned last week, and we're going to go ahead and create a nice little fun game slash project, if you will. Just to raise the hands, or if you want to put in the chat if you guys are on the Zoom. Who here knows the game rock, paper, scissors? Who here doesn't? Oh, we got some funny guys. I love it. So just so you guys know, rock, paper, scissors is a pretty simple game. Rock beats paper. Paper beats rock, scissors beat paper, and rock crushes scissors. And then you go rock, paper, scissors, and then two people put one of those three things out and battle against each other. And then if it's a tie, you keep going until it is one person wins over the other. Some people say rock, paper, scissors. Some people say rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And for now, I think we'll just go ahead and, I guess for simplicity, we'll just say rock, paper, scissors. And then if you guys want to add your own little version of it with rock, paper, scissors, shoot at the end, we can kind of go ahead and make some edits. That's the whole beauty of coding. You make a program, you look through it, how can you make it better? How can you make sure that it's marketable? How can you make sure that it will revolutionize the way we look at things? Obviously, I think with rock, paper, scissors might not do too much on the world, but this is just to get the ideas flowing. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go unfreeze the screen. So I'm gonna share the screen right now, and like before, we're gonna go ahead and hit create, and then Python right here would be their template, and we're gonna name it rock, paper, scissors, or anything else that kind of makes you. We can put it as project. You can put it as game, whatever makes you feel comfortable, as long as you know where to find the file. Create REPL. The first thing to know before we start coding this little project, this little rock, paper, scissors game, is what are the outcomes of rock, paper, scissors? I kind of went over it, but in a better way. You guys can kind of see this right here. So I'll go ahead and zoom in on it a little bit. So there's 3 opportunities to tie, 3 opportunities to lose, and 3 opportunities to win. Whenever you tie, you just go again, and then basically you see if there is a winner out of the 2 until there's no more ties. So there is a table right here of 9 different possibilities, because you have a 3x3 grid, and because you have 2 people with 3 different possibilities, 3 to the second power is 9. Therefore, we have 9 possibilities, or I should say outcomes, of rock, paper, scissors. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on this again. Let's see, I'll get rid of this. If you guys want to move certain things out of the way to make it easier to see, definitely easy to see that. And like I said, this is just a generic message that comes up when we start typing. It goes away. When we run our code, we just hit play and it comes over here on the console. Obviously, I accidentally wrote T. There's no variable T, therefore it gave me an error. All right. Anybody have any questions so far? Just a little brief history, background, whatever you want to call it, of rock, paper, scissors. All right. So when you're making a project, probably want to title it. So we use a comment, the hashtag sign, as you guys remember it, or the pound sign, if you will. So rock, paper, scissors. You can also go ahead and make a little formatting layout for your project. So certain ways to organize your code is kind of making comments that will give you a nice little layout. So for instance, we can put this section of it as importing libraries. We'll skip a few lines by hitting enter. We can go ahead and do user input, user input. So this is going to be the space where we're going to do user input. And then we could also have a little section for computer input. So the whole point of the game, as you can probably tell by these comments, that we're going to be having a user run our program and play against the computer. And we're going to make sure that the computer can go ahead and choose rock, paper, scissors to play against the user using your program. Then after that, let's see. We're gonna go a little bit to outcomes. So again, what is the result of you playing the computer against rock, paper, scissors? Specifically, we can hit tab if we want to go ahead and make it a little bit even more organized for subsections. And you can put 2, if that helps out, 2 pound symbols or 2 hashtag symbols for what is it called, for comments. So we can go user chooses rock. I'll just go ahead for the simplicity. I'll put two hashtag pound symbols and then, well, not indented. And you'll see why in just a little bit. And then we can also put a section right here. User chooses paper. User chooses scissors. Okay, so these are the comments that we're going to generally make right here. One more that we'll put at the end. User inputs an invalid item. Basically, whatever doesn't fall within rock, paper, or scissors. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? Does anybody have does anybody need more time writing this down? No? Okay. So again, here's your title. Let's go ahead and start with the library. So for this project specifically, we're going to go ahead and import the two libraries we went over last time. So we're going to go ahead and import random and import time. From random, we got rand int function, which got us a number between two different arguments. So if you put rand int 1 and 3, it'll give you a random number between 1 and 3. Specifically, we're going to be using that exact argument in this rock, paper, scissors project. Time, that's going to be for a delay. So that's going to be the sleep function that we got from there. So again, to refresh everybody, there's universal functions like print and input where it doesn't need to be a library that's called. There's certain ones that go ahead and have specific libraries that you need to call. And just because there's yellow underlined squiggly lines right here, it's not an error. This just means that we haven't taken any function from those libraries. So therefore, because we haven't utilized them, it might not be necessary for the code. So it won't personally give you an error, but it's just saying, hey, it might not be needed to condense your code. All right, so we got our libraries. Let's go and do something pretty simple, right? We're gonna go ahead and call this variable user input. So user input is gonna equal, and we want to make sure that we get a prompt for them. So we're gonna have input. So we're gonna go ahead and have them read whatever our prompt is and write something and hit enter based on that. So something that sounds about right for rock, paper, scissors is enter 1 for rock, enter 1 for rock, enter 2 for paper, and enter 3 for scissors. It's just a little prompt, and put a little space at the end. So that way the space gives you a little bit of a distance between the prompt that you type in as a coder and the input that your user is going to give you. So that way it's not jumbled together, it looks a little bit more aesthetic. Now, how do we ensure that it's going to be a number and not a piece of string? So remember, we have 3 different data types. We have int, we have float, and we have string, str. So in order to make sure that we want to keep it as 1, 2, and 3, we're going to go ahead and put a int function in the beginning, and we have to put an opening parentheses and an extra closing parentheses, because for every open parentheses, we need a closing parentheses. So now we have an input, and we made sure that whatever that input, it gets converted into an integer. So now it's going to definitely be a whole number, either hopefully 1, 2, or 3. So when we hit play, now all my program's going to do is just have this little prompt, and I can go ahead and I'll put 2 and I'll hit enter. Nothing happens because we don't have any more code. So we're going to go and write the rules. But before we do that, we also have to make sure that the computer can choose a number. And I'll try to spread this out so that way we have the console showing everything in a single line. Anybody have any questions so far? Anybody need more time to write down that prompt we did? Okay. So, and it's okay to have things spaced out as much as you want. I would like to say that this is just how I do it. But if there's a way to space it out, organize it in a way that you guys like, then there's definitely so many infinite ways to organize it as long as it makes sense to you. But I always say comments really make or break your projects and make sure that it can easily debug some errors that you might accidentally put in. So if there's like a semicolon missing, or maybe there's like a letter missing of a function or a variable, you can kind of go back and easily see it with comments so you know what part of it is going to be messed up and why is it messed up. All right, for the computer, we're going to go ahead and do this. Computer input. And again, it could be any variable name, but I think it's best to go ahead and put a variable name that has to do with what exactly you guys are doing. So this is going to be for the computer input. We can call it computer input. Will it work if I put a space after it? No, because computer input, for any variable, there cannot be a space. If you really, really have a long variable name and you have to space it out for your best interest, you can put like an underscore. So that way, technically, it's not separated, but it looks like it's separated. But it just depends on how you want to do it. As long as you use whatever you declare as a variable here and you use it throughout, you should be fine. But say if you put computer input here and then later down in your code, you put computer underscore input. Well, believe it or not, this input, sorry, this variable right here and this variable right here, they're completely different. So it's going to give you an error because you're declaring a variable that doesn't exist. Or that's not, it might not make sense because it might exist, but it might not be this one that you're thinking that you're using. Hopefully that makes sense. Anybody confused on that? So like again, variable names, no spaces in between, and it has to be very specific. It can't be even a letter, digit, whatever off. It has to be exactly the same if you want to use that exact variable. If you have variables that are similar to each other, then you can go ahead and use them in, you can use them specifically as long as you use the right one at the right time. All right. So we're going to import from the random library. So random dot. So that means, as review, we're importing right here. So we're importing random from the random library, and we're going to use a function. And in order to use a function, we use the dot, the period. The function we want to take, remember from last time, is rand int. And like I was mentioning earlier, we want to go ahead and go from 1 to 3. And if you need a little bit of like a, if you want to remember what this does, because you're like, oh, I might forget it when I go down the code, that's okay. You can put another comment that says, this makes a number between 1 and 3. You don't necessarily have to have it there if you can kind of visualize it and understand it. But basically, comments can go anywhere. You can never have enough comments. It's always beneficial to have as many comments as possible, but keep it organized, keep the space nice. Okay. So basically, the computer's input is just going to be a random number between 1 and 3. So now we have outcomes, and we have subsections of our outcomes. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that space because we don't really need to have a space, because this is like a, think of it as like an underline and then like a subsection, like bullet points, as to say if you're using like a Word document. That's why you can even go a third one if you needed to, a fourth one. It just depends on what is appropriate for your code. So this is a section of your code. This is going to be a subsection of your code based on that single section. So if user chooses rock, remember last time, I know we didn't go in depth about it. That was towards the end and it was a little bit rushed, but we'll go and take our time with this because we're going to be doing 9 different statements for this. The if, elif, and else statements. So it's pretty simple if you think about it. If this, then that. If that, then this. You have a condition, and if it's met, then do this. Else, if it's not met, do something else. You could also have if, meaning you're going to have a condition. You can have elif, which stands for else if, which means that you can meet the first condition, or you can meet the second condition. You can put another elif if you wanted. You have a third condition. You can have as many conditions that are specific. Else will just make sure that every other condition that wasn't specified above in an if or elif statement wasn't met, then that's what's going to happen over the else statement. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and write a piece of code right here, and we're going to go ahead and go in depth about it and further explain it. So if user input equals, will this work? No. Because when we write equals in Python coding, that assigns a value. If we actually want to write equal like the conditional operators and the mathematical operators that we learned about last time, then we want to put two equal signs. This means equal. It might get a little confusing, but remember, this assigns a variable to a value to a variable. This is saying whether it's equal or not. You could also have a statement that's like exclamation point equal. That means not equal to. But in this case, we're going to do equal to, so two equal signs. We could also include and or inside of if statements. So basically, if this and this, meaning both of them have to go ahead and be true, then this will happen. Or means one or the other. So a nice little comment you can put is, you can even put it up here. And means both. Sorry, and means both, or means one or the other, just in case it helps you out. So if user input equals 1, and remember, we put on the prompt, enter 1 for rock. So if rock is inputted, if the user wants to put rock, and computer input, the random number we generate with this guy, is also equal to 1, that means rock against rock. Can someone raise their hand and tell me what happens when you play rock against rock and rock, paper, scissors? Anybody? Yes, it ties. Thank you. So one other thing that you have to remember at the end of if statements, else statements, elif statements, you have to have a colon. So that way it brings up like, hey, if this happens, then this will happen based on that. Enter, if you put the colon correctly, then it'll automatically indent the if statement. So whatever is inside the if statement will fall under here. So print, you both chose rock, so it's a tie. Or something similar to that. Then we hit enter again. Notice that it goes onto the left side. So that means we're done with whatever happened. You can have multiple things happen in an if statement, but you have to make sure you indent. So it can also say print, play again, you know, or and you can continuously put so many things to execute under a specific if statement. But for this project, we're just going to go ahead and leave that one condition, that print statement, if that happens. We're going to make another statement, elif. So it's another specific condition. Not general. General would be else. But specific, if it equals 1 and computer input equals 2, colon, remember ended with a colon to introduce the condition, and if you hit enter, you'll get an indent. If you don't have a colon, you hit enter, it doesn't indent and it gives you a little error red line under the 2. So you might want to have, you want to have a colon, so it automatically indents. User picks 1, which is rock, computer puts 2, that is paper. So when rock covers paper, the person who put rock wins, and therefore the computer, sorry, what was that? That was the paper covered rock, which is a computer, the computer will win because paper covers rock. So we can do a similar statement, print, you chose rock and the computer chose paper, so you lose. And we're going to go ahead and do a lot more practice with this because this is pretty much what the whole project kind of entails. Making sure you know how to indent, right, if, elif, and else statements with a proper colon, and making sure that the conditions are met in order to go ahead and properly display what the results is. So let's continue to do it. Another elif. We're going to have we have the one if. The reason why it's not elif at the top is just because it introduces the if-else statement. So it's essentially like an elif statement, but it's just the first one, so that's why it's labeled if. So elif, user input equals 1, and computer input, again, we need to make sure that it's the same, no spaces in a variable name, is equal to 3, colon print. You chose rock and the computer chose scissors, so you win. Because if you chose rock, computer chooses scissors, rock crushes scissors, therefore it makes sense. You win. Okay. So this is just the user chooses rock, and we have the other two to go through. The what if user chooses paper? What if user chooses scissors? Well, there's three possibilities for either one because the computer can pick rock, paper, or scissors depending on what the user inputs. So far, I just want to make sure, does anybody have any questions? Is it straightforward? Makes sense? I could take a second to answer any questions real quick. Or if you want me to go up, feel free to take a picture of the board in case you want to, if you need to kind of continue to type in and you want to, us to keep going. Who needs more time on this? Anyone? Anybody confused so far? Anybody needs clarification? Okay. You guys seem like very smart. I know none of you guys have been really confused. I just want to make sure always, and don't feel afraid to let me know, okay? Again, this recording will be up on Canvas like the first part. Not Canvas, sorry, our Discord. So don't worry if you fall a little bit behind, and we can always come back to it on the Discord chat. All right. Considering that I think everybody's good, and I'm checking on Zoom, doesn't seem like anybody's saying anything on there. And again, everything I just mentioned applies to the Zoom people as well. All right, so it seems as though we're done with just this user chooses rock section. Now you're like, well, do I have to write every single one of that? Like, you can, but if you want to make things a little faster, remember, you could just copy and paste code. So for instance, I'm gonna go ahead and copy this first line, and I'm gonna put it under paper. Now we already started with an if, so the next one we're gonna add is just elif, right? And user already chose one above, so now these next three statements are gonna be if they chose two, and the computer chose one. And you can go ahead and just analyze what happens here. If the user chooses two, which is paper, and the computer chose rock, you win because rock, paper is covered. So you can just find this right here, the one that says you win at the end, and just change it up a little bit. So you didn't choose rock, you chose paper, and the computer didn't choose scissors, they chose rock. But you just go ahead and make sure you go one at a time, because if you do it all at once, you're going to be very confused because you're going to have to change so many different things individually. So it's best to go line by line until you're a little bit more proficient with Python coding. So you chose rock, computer chose, so you chose paper, computer chose rock, and then you write that statement down there and you win. And we'll just keep that going. We'll go ahead and copy the second line right here. So two, and computer is going to also choose because this is the next one in the computer input. So if you chose paper and the computer also chose paper, it's a tie. So find the one that's a tie on the above. We'll go and use this guy right here. Put it right below. Put a little tab. So make sure it's indented. Anything below an elif or if or else statements has to be indented until you get to the next if, elif, or else. Just so you know, there can only be one else because that's going to be the rest of the conditions you never specified, but we'll get to that at the end. So you both chose not rock, you both chose paper. So remember to edit that, and we can go to the next one. So next one, we'll go ahead and click right here because the computer is now choosing 3, which is scissors. And we can hit enter. And instead of us choosing 1, we chose 2 because we're choosing, this is for choosing paper, which is listed as 2. We're going to go ahead, and if you chose paper and your the computer chose scissors, you lose because scissors cut paper. So find the one that says you lose. Control C, Control, whoops, I accidentally hit Control C. Control C, or you can hit right click and you can hit copy. And then instead of Control V, you can hit paste. Oh, actually, might be easier just to go Control V because it's giving a little bit of an issue. So just Control C, Control V after you highlight whatever you wanted to copy and paste. So you didn't choose rock, you chose paper because this whole section is about us choosing paper. and the computer didn't choose paper as well, it chose scissors because it won. It cuts us. And so you lose. And we can put a little bit of a space. That was a lot faster than the first one because we just kind of utilized the code and went line by line, so we didn't make any errors. All right, last section, we're gonna go ahead and just do the same thing, but for scissors. Feel free to go ahead, because I know some of you guys understand, some of you guys want to follow, but I'll just go ahead and say it out loud. So we'll start with this guy right here, the first one. So computer's gonna choose 1, but we're gonna choose 3, which is scissors. Hit enter, it's gonna automatically indent. I'm gonna go a little faster since we did it once before, or actually I should say twice before. So if you chose scissors and the computer chooses rock, then you lose. So find the one that says you lose, put it right here. You didn't choose paper, you chose scissors. Computer didn't choose scissors, okay, they chose rock, and so you lose. Next line, here, we take this line right here. Computer does 2, but we did 3, which is scissors. If we did scissors, computer does paper, then we win because scissors cut paper. So find the one that says you win. And there's the next one, which is the last guy right here. And we're gonna change that to 3 because we got scissors. And lastly, if scissors and scissors, we tie. So find the one that says tie. But the thing is, you didn't choose both paper, you and the computer both chose scissors. Pretty simple, right? We literally just did this much code with copying and pasting, but without understanding what we were doing, it causes a lot of confusion. And again, look how much code we got going on. Comments will go ahead and keep your code organized. So if you make an error somewhere, then it'll go ahead and be easier to debug. A debug is a phrase to go ahead and fix whatever errors are going to be appearing on your code. All right, the last thing, because we didn't close it out with an else statement yet. The last thing is, what if the user inputs a valid item? What if the user put in a 4, a 5, a -1? What if the computer typed in a number? I'm sorry, a letter, or a string, a bunch of letters? Or what if they just put something that was kind of outlandish? So we have to make sure to go ahead and give this else. So it's very similar, but now we're closing in an else and a colon, because right away there's every other single condition that's not met by this one, 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 or this one. We have 9 specific conditions, but there's an infinite amount of things that that the user can write into there. So for all other conditions that are non-specific, you hit enter, it'll indent after you put that colon. We're gonna go ahead and print. I like to say it's always best to be very specific with your user, so that way they get the best idea what to do next, so they're not confused the next time around. Your choice is invalid. Stop the program. Run the program again and choose a number between 1 and 3 in the form of a digit. So your choice is invalid. Stop the program, run the program again, and choose a number between 1 and 3 in the form of a digit. You might not need this part right here. Stop the stop the program, because it should stop by itself. We'll go ahead and just get rid of that, just to make the line a little bit less confusing and a little bit shorter. Your choice is invalid. Run the program again and choose a number between 1 and 3 in the form of a digit. Does anybody need to go in a part of the section above? Anybody need more time to write down a certain section above or below? Cool. Well, congratulations, you made your first project. So now when we hit play, it's going to give us a prompt. I'm going to actually, for some reason, it crunches it up unless we have enough space. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to do it one more time. Enter 1 for rock, enter 2 for paper, enter 3 for scissors. And user get to choose. So let's say we do 1 for rock. You chose rock, and the computer randomly chose paper, so you lose because paper covers rock. Try it again. We can go ahead and choose paper. You chose paper, and the computer chooses scissors. So you got cut by the scissors from the computer, and you lost. And we can try a 3. It's never gonna be, it could be the same thing technically, but very low chance of it. But it randomly generates whatever the computer chooses based on your code, and you gotta specifically pick whatever you want to go ahead and do as the user. So you both chose scissors, so it's a tie. All right, now what if I did this? What if I was like, haha, I'm Mr. Funny Guy, I'm gonna choose 4. Your choice is invalid, run the program again and choose a number between 1 and 3. What if I'm like, oh, I didn't understand it has to be a number. So I'll pick 1. It'll just kind of give me an error. So there are certain limitations because this is a more beginner to intermediate type of project, but there are some limitations with Python where you have to be a little bit more specific. One way to kind of go ahead and, let me see. Because what it's trying to do right here is, remember on the code, you typed in a piece of string, whoops. You typed in some string. And when you typed in a string, it's trying to convert that string into an integer, which it can't do, and so that's why it gives you an error. I wonder what happens if I get rid of that. So let's say if I want to write 1. Oh, okay. So instead of forcing it to go ahead and convert, let's get rid of that int statement right there. So get rid of the int with the opening parentheses and the end parentheses. So it looks now like this. So that way, when you run it and you type in a piece of string, whoops, and you run it and you type in a piece of string, like whatever, it says your choice is invalid. Or if I just write like 3, you know? So instead of converting a number into a string, which is impossible at this level, you're not going to be running into an error. So that's going to be a little bit proper. So this is a way of debugging. Question? Oh, let's see. Oh, okay. So I guess we'll go ahead and go back, and then we'll stick to putting int and that opening and extra closing parentheses on there. So unfortunately, with the limitations of the fundamentals, we learned that if you actually put in like a bunch of string, that's going to give you an error. But like he was saying, what's your name? Nathan? Yeah. Like Nathan was saying, we want to still be able to use the numbers and whatnot. So make sure you have this int opening parentheses plus closing at the end, so that way it runs properly. It's a learning curve. We're all learning and we're all understanding, hey, what's going to produce an error? What's going to produce what we want? That's why, again, I'm going back to it a few times, but that's how important it is to go ahead and do some comments and outlining. Now, we didn't use the time library. That's why it's still giving us the squiggly line. So some things I like to, I used to teach 3rd to 7th graders Python. And what I always like to tell them, which applies to not just them, but to anyone, when you have a program, what's the next best thing to do? You want to improve it. You want to make sure it looks a lot more aesthetic, more helpful, more useful, more cool, whatever it may be. So after user input, I can go ahead and do this. I can put time.sleep. So that means I'm going to go ahead and import from the time library with the period, the sleep function. Remember, a review would be in the sleep function, you can put how many seconds you want it to delay it for. So you can delay it for, let's say we delay it for 5 seconds, just to give you an example. So now we have it on there. I'm going to print. So we're going to go ahead and enter, let's say I enter 1 for rock. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then boom, shows. Sorry, I counted a little too fast, but in a perfect world, in perfect seconds, that's when it will appear. One thing to make it a little bit more dramatic, you can go ahead and do something like this. We'll make another section. We'll call it, we can call it delay for intensity, if you would. You guys want to have the most intense rock, paper, scissors out there, so you're going to make a addition to your code, something that's going to make it look a little cooler. Whoops. What happened? Okay, sorry. That was a little error sometimes when it's the internet signal is not good, but we're good. So we're gonna call it delay for intensity. So we're gonna go ahead and write, after you hit enter as a user, then we're gonna put another print statement. And again, you can add another one if you guys play rock, paper, scissors, shoot, but we're just gonna go ahead and play rock, paper, scissors on this one just for simplicity. So print rock. We can make it a little bit like a dot, 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 little, what's coming up next? Then we're gonna go hit, what is it called? Time.sleep to import the sleep function. And we'll put 2 seconds, kind of interesting. And you can play around with the seconds. What looks cooler? A longer delay, slow delay, something in the middle. You can always just go back and edit the code. Print, again, we'll go ahead and put paper, dot, dot, dot. Time.sleep. Print again. And this time it could be really epic. We're gonna go ahead and put scissors, because it's the last statement before we see who wins. And we can also go ahead and, instead of printing it right away, we can go and print. So we have quotations, and then we can put a little space. So now it gives like a blank line essentially. There's other ways to do that, but this is just a simple way of just showing you what we learned. There's other little shortcuts to doing that, but we're not going to go over it right now. And then also we can put a little bit of a, what is it called? A little space right here. So that way the user input plus these are not together. These will be together. We'll put another space into what happens. Anybody need more time on this part? All right, let's see. Did we make it epic? We shall find out. All right, so it says enter 1 for rock, enter 2 for paper, enter 3 for scissors. Let's go 2 for paper. Rock, wait 2 seconds. Paper, wait 2 seconds. Scissors, you chose paper and the computer chose scissors. Pretty cool, huh? Another thing that I do like to do is you can also put counters. You can be like, hey, when this happens, add 1 to here. So when we want to use mathematical operators, let's see. Let's go back to up here. So we can put, as another section, all the way on the top, below libraries, above user input, we can put declare counting variables. These are just improvements we're making to an already working program. Declare counting variables. So they can put users, or we can put user score equals 0. Computer score equals 0. So we'll go back down to these guys right here. It's a tie. So we don't want to do anything because it's going to be a tie. If we go ahead and hit you lose, every time you have a lose, we can put a second statement, like I'm saying, under that elif statement. So make sure it's specifically under this elif, and you can go ahead and do a little function. So we'll go back up, user score. If you lose, that means the computer score will go up by 1. Computer score equals computer score. So you're going to declare it same. So it's at 0 right now. But we're going to go in 0 plus 1 whenever you lose. Similarly, we're going to go back down over here, and we're going to write user score when you win equals user score plus 1. Let's go ahead and copy this line right here and put it to every time where you lost. So every time you lost, you would enter and go right there. Every time you lost, enter and right there. Then you could also go on the top and take this line. So whenever you win, you can go, and every time you win, you can go right here, and you can go right here, and now it'll up a counter. Do you guys understand why we don't put anything on the tying ones? Because nobody's scores go up. Nobody wins in that, so it's still at that same value. Okay. So let's see. At the end of it, outside of the if, elif, and else statements, you can also hit print the variable user score. And then print computer score. So we're printing the values that's assigned to the variable. Right now, at the beginning, it's assigned to 0. That's not going to work because we have to make sure that it's a continuous thing. Because every time we declare it to be 0 over here, it's going to go ahead and reset back to 0. So if I add 1 and I run the program, it's going to bring it back to 0 with these two statements right here. Let me take a second, kind of see where a good spot would be for these guys. I believe there is a way using these statements called for loops and while loops. It's a little bit more complex, and that's something that you can use where we learn with the fundamentals to do so. But we're not going to go over it just because of the lack of time. And if you guys want to have a Python Part 3 workshop this semester, or maybe continuing next semester where we can go ahead and schedule 3 of them, we could do that. Because for loops and while loops, they do come in effect that's probably the next step after learning if, elif, and else statements. Though it does take a good amount of time to go ahead and understand and learn them before we can use them in a project. But we can kind of go ahead and show this right here, just for the 1 point. So if I hit 1 for rock, wait 2 seconds, paper, wait 2 seconds, scissors, like rock, paper, scissors. You chose rock and the computer chose scissors. So this is going to be your score, and that's going to be the user score. So in order to go ahead and put a little prompt, you can go ahead and say, what is it called? Your score is colon. And we don't have to put a space after the colon, because when we use a comma after there, it automatically puts a space between this piece of string and the value of this variable. So we could also do something similar. The computer's score is, and then again, no space, comma. And now it should go ahead and be more specific, because who has 1, who has 0? It's a little confusing. So rock, paper, scissors, let's go 3 for scissors. Rock, wait 2 seconds, paper, wait 2 seconds, scissors. You chose paper and the computer chose rock, so you win. Your score is 1, the computer's score is 0. What I encourage you guys to do is, if you want to further pursue Python coding, the next thing to learn, and I'll put it right here, is find out how to use while loops and for loops. There's several videos, there's several teachers. I can go ahead and and help you explain it. If you guys want to hit me up directly, that's fine. And when I have time, when you guys have time, this will be the next step in order to preserve that 1 and 0 score. So while the program is running, we wanted to go ahead and keep adding to there. So while loops, they're mainly for when a condition is met, or until a condition is met, I should write. Until a condition is met, loop it indefinitely, like keep it going. And then lastly, when you for loops are loop until a specified time. So if I know how long to do it for, hence the name for loops, that's how many times I'll loop for it. While is while this is true, loop it, or while this is false, loop it until it becomes the opposite, then it'll go ahead and stop. So that's going to be the next thing in order to make sure that the count doesn't go from either 1 or 0, 0 to 1, and then go back to up top, back to zero, because we're gonna redeclare the numbers to go back to zero, so it's only gonna go up to 1 or 0 maximum. All right. I believe that's gonna give us the time that we have here. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'll go ahead and we can go ahead and what is it called? We can go ahead and ask questions if you guys have any, or if you want me to go back to a certain part of it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining. My name is Samir Sharma, and I'm the president of IEEE this academic year. And thank you guys so much for attending. We'll go ahead and post this on the Discord very soon. Thank you so much.